Brass Facts here. Today I'm going to be doing a quick primer on flashlights. This is a continuation of the 3 things you need on a rifle video and is geared towards newer shooters, which there are many of right now. I have a bunch of friends getting into firearms, and instead of spending all day on Discord trying to explain things, I figure I'd make this in video forms so they can go over it and kind of see my take on things. Speaking of which, disclaimer, this is just one dude's opinion, my opinion. So take it as such. If you disagree, that's fine, and hey, throw it in the comments and maybe you can help someone else out. I've come to my following conclusions by using critical thinking, taking classes, having other people tell me about their classes, and absorbing a lot of what better, smarter, and more experienced shooters have said on the subject, and incorporating it into my own viewpoint, right? A lot of it is just common sense. Before we get on to the show, this is going to be a bit rambly, so strap yourself in, maybe make a drink. Alright, on with the show. Today's topic, flashlights in the context of a rifle, pistol caliber carbine, something you put to your shoulder, or don't because it's a pistol, meant for home defense, should hit the fan, that is the end of the world, and everything in between. Real quick, for a defensive, and I guess offensive, use of a rifle, you need a flashlight. Not to get into it too much, but you need to be able to target ID, that is figure out what you're shooting at specifically, so on and so forth. Go watch the video on 3 things you need to have on a rifle to get more information on why. For now, I assume you'll agree you want a flashlight, but you don't know where to begin. Step 1, some terms, lumens. There are other measurements of light power, like candela and lux, but since lumens is generally what is on the package, we'll stick with that, lumens. The amount of light coming out of the light. You want as much as possible. Real quick, all else equal, more lumens allow you to see farther in the dark. Duh. More easily discern intention and positive ID at range. Cutting through photonic barriers is also a benefit. That is, having your light shine through other light. That is, you're shining your light from a brightly lit area to a dark area. You're shining your light from a dark area through a brightly lit area and into a secondary dark area, like street lamps, and other such scenarios. Weak lights struggle specifically a lot with this photonic barrier issue, so useful to have it on that, especially on a rifle. You're also able to control targets more effectively with higher lumen lights. 1,000 lumen lights shined at a person's face in the middle of the night is quite blinding and very disorienting, especially if they don't have a firearm and can't really push past it, because they can't see anything. It's borderline non-lethal levels of control, though I wouldn't rely on it as such. Higher lumens also allow you to keep the gun more effectively for modern scanning techniques. That is, have the gun ever so slightly lowered, so your vision clears the top of the optic, you're looking over the optic, and it allows you to scan around without having this in your field of view. The light then bounces off the floor and illuminates the area more effectively because you have a lot of lumens to play with, so to speak. At the end of the day, I believe 500 lumens is the minimum requirement to do what I mentioned above, and 1,000 lumens is more preferable. Anything less and you start losing some of this capability. And while you certainly can get the job done with less lumens, and badasses have been doing such with mag lights for well over 50 years now, the technology exists, so why intentionally handicap yourself? You can get one of these for quite cheap. So in short, 500 lumens at least, 1,000 preferable, and the more the merrier. Alright, this segues nicely into flashlight companies. At the moment, I'd say the industry is dominated by Streamlight and Surefire, with caveats for Olight, Inforce, and Modlight. So these are flashlight companies. So Streamlight, and that's the one you're seeing right here, riding on this Gram Power Strybog. There are basically 2 models you want to look at, the HL and the HLX. This is an HL, and it has 600 lumens. The HLX, which you'll see in a second, is at 1,000 lumens, and it is a slightly larger body. You want to avoid the HLX with a laser. That one, I think, is at the top of the list when you search on Amazon, and it kind of sucks. Don't want it too heavy. Lots of reasons. Just HL or HLX. They look like so. They come with a tape switch, so you can actuate the light effectively with your finger, or a button. They come with both, so you can choose either. Alternatively, you can use something like a TLR1, which is a pistol light meant to mount underneath a pistol, and it works in certain setups. However, if you're running an AR-15, I would just stick with the HL or HLX. They come in at $100 to $120 on Amazon. comes with that tape switch I mentioned. It's a excellent starter pack, and you generally won't outgrow it. Similarly, with Surefire, there are two options. There's the 500 lumen and 1000 lumen one, so that's the Mini Scout M300 or the M600 Scout Light, respectively. There is a dual fuel variant, which kicks up the lumen count even higher to 1500 lumens in a similar price range. Speaking of price, Surefires are significantly more expensive than the Streamlight options, costing about $300 and requiring a separate purchase to get a usable, in my opinion, tape switch. That is, this pressure pad you can press on to turn on your light. As an aside, a personal aside, I think Streamlight has done a lot to close the gap between Surefire, which used to be the gold standard, and a cheaper light such as the Streamlight. I personally haven't noticed any increase in durability, which is generally what is touted as the increase in price, and I've actually broken 2 Surefire lights, and I've had 0 Streamlights break, so take it what you will. As mentioned, there are other companies like Modlight, which is an excellent company in offering cutting-edge flashlights. However, they are extremely expensive, as is often the cost of newer tech. If you're looking at a Modlight, this probably isn't the video for you because you know a lot more about lights. It's a Gucci light, if you want to call it that. Then there's Olight. Olight used to kind of be a joke for weapon lights. They used to be the gas station light equivalent of the WML world. Their newer line seems to be a lot better and has some potential, but I personally haven't run them yet. And I'm kind of hesitant to buy a light that comes from a company that seems to put a lot of emphasis on gimmicks instead of actually just having a light that does light things. But I'm not going to get into that too much. I haven't run them, so I can't say for sure. That's just my gut feeling on it. And then there's Inforce, which offers a slightly different take on how to do flashlights, where they have everything kind of in the flashlight itself, right? The mount is built into the body of the light. It's very lightweight with plastic, and the button is kind of more of a tape switch design, with much more surface area. I personally find they work really well as a smaller light for smaller things like this pistol caliber carbine. However, on a rifle light, I prefer a larger tape switch and prefer a much tighter light pattern. These Inforces ones are much more floody in terms of their light pattern and less focused, which means you can't go as far. I haven't personally run these in extended periods of time, so I can't say one way or the other. I just know my experience with their first generation, and I think something like a Streamlight makes a lot more sense, especially for a newer shooter. Okay, you've gotten a Surefire, Streamlight, or whatever you wanted to get, and now you need to know, how do we put it on the rifle in such a way that is convenient? The most basic option has you be able to attach one of these lights directly to a Picatinny section like this. You're going to end up at the 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock, 90 degrees offset. And this works just fine, especially when you're using your tape switch. It gets the light well out of the way, and you can use the tape switch to actuate the light all the time. Easy peasy. As for the placement of the tape switch, the objective is to get the tape switch, or the actuation of the light if you're using a button, in such an area where you can always access the light instantaneously. Unlike what Hollywood seems to show, you don't actually just leave your light on once you want light. You want to turn on the light when you want to do something, and then you want to turn it off as fast as possible for obvious reasons. So tasks include, you want to scan a room, you want to shoot a target, illuminate a target, whatever. Once you finish that task, you want your light to go off. Generally, these tasks take less than a second or about a second. So the ability to quickly turn the light on and turn the light off, or use a pressure pad where you just hold for light on and release for light off, is important. You want that. You don't want to be fighting your equipment to turn on your light, which is a basic firearm task. So you want to set it up in a convenient way. That is why I'm a fan of tape switch for novice shooters, because it's very easy to get an intuitive setup. Just place it right where you normally would have your hand. Because I'm a righty or a lefty, I need to be over here. So simply when I grab my firearm, the tape switch is right where I put my thumb, a tiny bit more added pressure, and the light comes on. This also applies when we're running a button. You want to place the light in such a fashion that it is incredibly easy to turn the light on. I'll show you a couple of my setups to give you a rough idea of how I personally have it set up, and that might give you an idea of how you would want to set up your light. Remember, the number one objective is to set up the light in such a fashion that you can easily access it, turn it on and off, without adjusting your grip in a significant fashion. You'll also notice most of my lights have aftermarket mounts, because I'm not a fan of just having the light stick out here, both for ergonomic reasons, and bulk, so on and so forth. And I will cover those mounts as they come up. So the first setup is this Strybog, right? I've been showing you this entire time. Let's get this magazine out. Make sure the firearm is clear. Okay, so since I'm a lefty, it's set up as such. I come up on the gun with the angled foregrip, and my thumb, as I showed you earlier, is resting right on the tape switch. Easy access to the light. Come back a little bit for permanent on if I need that. But I have that out of the way because the main objective is just right here. Easy to use and compact. I'm using a Thorntail Scout mount for this specific setup. I have a slightly different setup. Because my main objective, when I use this firearm, I will generally be using night vision. The controls are set up to use my night vision. This tape switch goes towards the laser and uses the laser. And instead, I use a button off to the side over here. This is kind of an awkward angle that I have to consciously engage. Why, you might ask, after talking about wanting the light on, so easy access to the light this entire time. When I'm under night vision, I don't want to be accidentally turning on my light. And a lot of doing rifle stuff is just grabbing your rifle, moving it around. And if I had this light on a tape switch, I would be accidentally discharging my light all the time. And I don't want that. But I still want access to a white light when I'm under night vision, just in case I want to transition or I don't have night vision. So I've chosen to use a button setup for this. Here is another very standard setup. Comes with that Surefire tape switch. Right here's the mount, and I've zip tied it down further so it doesn't go anywhere. I have the light attached with a air socket mount, which is the same mount you saw in the previous light. This is a HLX or HL, same light, so 600 lumens. This was back before they had the HLX, so I don't have it on this one. And the grip is right here, so subconsciously I don't need to think, or consciously I don't need to think about turning on the light. My hand is right there, and I just turn it on when I want it. Easy peasy. The light is mounted as far forward as possible, so there's a minimal amount of shadow created by the barrel, right? Because there will be some shadow, and we want to avoid that. And yeah, super simple setup, 600 lumens. Here is one of my newer rifles. So you'll notice this one is also configured for night vision. However, this is more of a daytime gun that happens to have night vision equipment on it. So my priority has been placed, once again, for white light, because I probably won't have night vision when I'm using this specific firearm. So, tape switch, as you saw before, zip tied in just to be extra secure. This one, as you can see, is slightly larger. It is the HLX, so this is 1,000 lumens. And yeah, I would generally recommend more lumens, but those other firearms are older. This is a new one. And finally, right here, this is a style I haven't actually really talked about yet because I generally think it's inferior in most ways and less intuitive, though it certainly works. This is a handheld light mounted to a Thorntail regular mount. So this is something you would normally just hold in your hand. And because of how this AK is set up, this is how I hold my hand right here, and all I need to do is slightly push forward and the light engages. So this is certainly another option, and it's actually one of the cheaper options though. Alright, so that about covers it. Remember, this was more for someone getting into flashlights, just some basic information to get them started. And as one gets more experienced, you'll form your own opinions and be able to set up in your way. So like I said, this was just a slight primer, not a comprehensive list, just my take on how lights work. So that's been some brass facts for you. Have a nice day.